Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today I'll be showing off a couple blades that I've made recently, and while we're at it, we'll talk a little bit about Japanese swords and sword making. Today I'll be showing a few swords that I've been working on recently, and in the process I'll give a short overview of Japanese sword types generally. You know, when we think of Japanese swords, we tend to think of this, the katana. But the fact is, Japanese swords come in a huge variety of shapes and sizes. So today I'll do a little show and tell with, some blades that I've finished recently, and along the way I'll talk about some of the types of swords that you'll find in the Japanese tradition. So first point to make here. Japanese sword guys tend to use the term nihonto when talking about Japanese swords. Now, all that means is Japanese sword, but it has a more technical meaning. It means that a sword has been made using traditional methods, starting with tamahagane, which is a primitive direct smelted steel. And that's then folded and forge welded to produce a refined high layer steel, which in turn is forged into the actual sword itself. Now, none of the blades that I'm going to be showing today are nihonto. I do occasionally make blades that are tamahagane based, but these aren't them. What I'm going to be focusing here today mostly is on blade shapes and sizes. All these blades have been forged from modern factory steel in one way or another. Some are folded steel, some are not. But still, not nihonto. So the classic Japanese blade is the katana, the long sword. But over the years, I suspect that a lot more shorter swords have been made. So let's start right here. This blade is one that I recently made, and it's an example of what's known as a tanto. Now, by the way, Japanese style blades are manufactured separately from their handles and sheaths, so I'm only going to be showing, you can see, this is actually just a blade, nothing to go with it, no handle or scabbard. That's the real focus of what I do as a bladesmith. So anyway, basically any defensive type knife under 1 foot in blade length, so that's the length from here to here, not the entire length of the blade. If that's under a foot, then it's described in Japanese parlance as a tanto. The chisel type point, often referred to as a tanto in Western knives, has nothing to do whatsoever with Japanese tantos. Most tantos are formed in what's known as a hirazukuri geometry, which simply means that the blade has a single bevel or edge facet that runs all the way up to the spine, just like in a butcher knife. This blade is pretty typical in size and shape for a tanto, though you'll often see them slimmer, shorter, straighter, or whatever. There are a very wide variety of types. So here's another tanto, and this one is much more unusual than the last one. This is sort of an upsized tribute to the so-called Hocho Masamune blades. Hocho refers to a kitchen knife. So while the blades forged by the famous 14th century smith Masamune were not actually kitchen knives, the shape of the knife, as you can see, resembled a chef's knife. Incidentally, some of these may be available on my website, waltersorrellsblades.com. So, if you're interested in buying one of these blades or something similar to them, check my website for more information. One of the features that you'll notice here is this wiggly line, the hamon, which runs down the length of the blade. This is not a cosmetic feature. It's not produced by etching. It's not a surface effect. It actually represents a structural difference in the steel of the blade. Now, polishing and etching and all kinds of different things can bring out the appearance of it, but fundamentally there's something different about the steel in the different parts of the blade. So the steel on the edge has been hardened, while the steel on the spine has not. Like I said, when properly polished, the hamon stands out as a naturally occurring visual marker of the transition between those two sections of the blade. I showed in a recent video how that effect's achieved. Link in the cards if you're interested in seeing more on that. So here is a very different kind of blade. This is a Wakizashi. Two things that you'll quickly notice. First, obviously this blade's a lot longer than the ones that we just looked at. Any Japanese sword with a blade length between 1 and 2 feet is referred to as a Wakizashi. The samurai class in Japan were permitted to carry 2 swords, one of which would typically have been the longer katana, while the smaller companion sword would have been a Wakizashi or maybe a Tanto. Now, the other thing distinguishing this blade from the other two we've looked at is that it has this secondary bevel known as a shinogi running the length of the blade. Typically, shorter blades had the single bevel construction, while again, typically, longer blades had the double bevel or shinogi zakuri construction that you see here. The tip was also formed into a distinct point rather than flowing seamlessly from the rest of the blade. And this has a very long tip, which was not so typical, but you get the general point. And here's another blade that I'm just finishing up. This is a katana. As you can see, it's so big that you can't even fit it into the frame of the video here. As I said, typically katanas are double beveled or shinogi zakuri type blades, but not always. As you can see, in this case, there is no secondary bevel on this blade. And in fact, there are many fine examples of hirazakuri or single bevel blades like this one that can be found in the Japanese tradition. Personally, I've kind of specialized in this particular type in recent years. They really cut efficiently, and they make a nice canvas, if you want to call it that, for the hamon on here. Because you have a nice wide piece of steel, you can really isolate that hamon and kind of show it off. If you'll notice in the close-ups, this was made from modern homogeneous steel, whereas the Tantos were made from folded steel, resulting in more of a wood grain effect. If I were choosing one for purely functional purposes as a martial arts blade, for instance, I'd choose the homogeneous steel over the folded steel. Many people think that there's something superior about folded steel, but there's not at all. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't add strength to the sword. Of course, in the past, traditional Japanese steel had to be folded in order to eliminate impurities and to homogenize the steel, but that's a historical thing, and it really doesn't have anything to do with modern steels. People prefer it mainly for aesthetic reasons, it looks cool. But functionally, there's no advantage to all that folding. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little tour of some of my recent work. Like I said, if this sort of thing interests you, check out waltersorrellsblades.com. I've actually got a whole series of videos available there about how to make blades similar to the ones that I was showing you today. Thanks for stopping by the workshop, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, guys. If you feel like you got something out of this video, don't forget to subscribe. Also, click on the link to Patreon for a great way to give back to the channel. Plus, check me out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Links in the description. If you want something sharp and pointy, maybe a gift for yourself or one of the cooler people in your life, check out my Tactics Armory website and pick up one of our tactical or outdoor knives. And finally, if you want to learn to make hamons or Japanese swords, check out waltersorrellsblades.com, where you can find videos about how I make hamons, as well as forging, mounting, polishing, and fittings for Japanese swords. Thanks, and see you soon.